The laughter hit Lily Hartman before she even stepped fully into the room. It wasn't the warm kind, the kind you hear at family gatherings or late-night dinners. No, this was sharp, pointed, the sort of laughter that slices a person open long before a word is spoken. She froze for a breath, clutching the strap of her modest handbag, wishing she had never agreed to attend the reunion in the first place. "There she is," Chase Willard announced loudly, lifting his champagne glass as if he were toasting a joke only he understood. "Still no husband yet, Lily? Some things never change." People turned. Smirks followed. Her cheeks warmed. She forced a small smile, the kind you wear when you're trying not to break. Lily hadn't seen Chase in 2 years, not since he left her for a woman with a louder laugh, a shinier wardrobe, and a family name he could brag about. Even now, standing across the room, his arrogance filled the space like a bad cologne. "I guess some women just don't get chosen," he added, with a lazy shrug. The words hit harder than he expected. Lily wasn't weak, but tonight she was tired. Tired of fighting bills, tired of losing jobs she worked hard for, tired of pretending she wasn't hurting. She looked away, steadying her breath. And that was when she felt it. A shift in the room. A subtle hush. Someone had stepped through the doorway behind her. Someone tall, someone composed, someone whose presence pressed quietly against the chatter like a heavy velvet curtain. Lily didn't turn yet, but she felt the heat of a focused gaze settle gently on her back, as if the stranger had already understood what kind of cruelty she was standing in. Across the room, Chase's smug smile faltered. His eyes widened, just slightly. Behind Lily, a calm, deep voice spoke low enough for only a few to hear. "Is this how you treat someone you once claimed to love?" The entire room fell silent. Lily Hartman had never been the kind of woman who demanded attention. She wasn't loud, she wasn't flashy, and she certainly wasn't the type to walk into a room expecting eyes to turn. At 27, she lived a simple life in a modest apartment in Queens, a place with creaky floors and thin walls, where she could hear her elderly neighbor watching late-night game shows. She worked long hours as a mid-level marketing assistant, a job that barely covered rent, groceries, and her mother's medication. Most days, Lily carried herself with quiet strength. She woke before sunrise, brewed cheap grocery store coffee, packed her lunch, and rode the crowded subway with a book tucked close to her chest. She was the kind of woman who remembered birthdays, who gave her seat to strangers, who stayed late to help coworkers who never thanked her. She didn't complain, not even when life felt heavier than it should. But behind her gentle smile lived years of small, subtle wounds. Chase Willard had been one of them. They had met in college, when she still believed kindness was enough to make love last. Chase loved her in the beginning, or at least he loved having someone who adored him. But as his ambitions grew sharper, his words grew crueler. He criticized her clothes, her salary, her lack of spark, as he put it. And when he finally left her for someone wealthier, he didn't just walk away. He made sure she knew she had never been enough. It took her months to rebuild herself after that. Yet here she was, years later, standing in a room full of people who remembered Chase's version of the breakup, not the truth. A room that still believed she was the girl he discarded like an old sweater. But what no one here knew, what even Lily herself hadn't realized, was that life was quietly steering her towards something extraordinary. Because the man whose presence had just silenced the entire room, the man who had spoken up for her without even knowing her name, the man whose calm voice cut through Chase's cruelty like a blade, Evan Kingsley was not just anyone. He was the one name whispered in every boardroom in Manhattan. The man whose company influenced half the skyline. The billionaire CEO known for ending careers with a single phone call. And for reasons Lily could not yet understand, his eyes were on her. A woman the world underestimated. A woman who was about to rise. The reunion was held at the Maple Ridge Country Club, a place Lily had never imagined stepping foot in again. She remembered passing it as a teenager, looking through the tall iron gates, wondering what kind of people lived lives so polished they held parties in places where chandeliers sparkled even in the afternoon light. Tonight, she stood beneath those chandeliers, golden, enormous, dripping elegance, feeling like she had wandered into the wrong movie set. The ballroom was a world unto itself. Tables draped in ivory linen, soft jazz drifting from a live quartet, guests holding glasses of chilled champagne, whispering about promotions, real estate, new cars, and vacations in Cabo. Everything gleamed with an effortless luxury Lily had never known. She didn't even belong to the same universe. She tried to steady herself as she stepped farther in. She didn't want to look intimidated, though she felt like a mismatched puzzle piece among people who had never worried about overdue bills or medical insurance. Her simple dress, bought on sale at a department store clearance rack, didn't help. It wasn't glamorous, not like the shimmering gowns around her, but it was the best she could afford. The smell of citrus polish and expensive perfume filled the air, wrapping the room in a scent that shouldn't have felt hostile, but it did. Every corner of it reminded Lily of how far she was from the life she once dreamed she might have. Chase, unsurprisingly, fit right in. He wore an immaculate navy suit, crisp white shirt, and a smile sharpened with entitlement. His new fiancée, a polished social media personality named Sabrina Lowell, stood proudly beside him, her diamond bracelet glittering like a spotlight. She kissed his cheek dramatically whenever anyone looked their way. "People like us," she overheard Sabrina saying, "we just naturally gravitate toward success." Lily's stomach twisted. She moved toward a quieter corner of the room, wishing she could disappear entirely. She didn't want to be a spectacle. She didn't want pitying glances or whispered gossip. She wanted the night to pass without another bruise on her heart. But fate rarely listens. Because just as she reached for a glass of water, the room shifted again, this time not because of Chase's cruelty, but because the double doors opened one more time. And Evan Kingsley walked in. His arrival didn't just draw eyes, it rearranged the air itself. Conversations paused, people straightened, someone even gasped softly. Lily didn't understand yet. She just felt the weight of something beginning. Something bigger than humiliation. Something that would change everything. Chase Willard had always been the kind of man who thrived on being watched. In college, he was the golden boy, the charming athlete with perfect hair, a bright future, and a smile that tricked people into ignoring the cracks beneath it. But beneath that polished exterior lived a man who needed control, the way others needed oxygen. He didn't just want admiration, he wanted dominance. He wanted to know he was above everyone else, especially Lily. He approached her now with that same smirk he used the night he ended their relationship, with a shrug and a single sentence. "You're not a fit for the life I want." "Lily," he drawled as if her name were a burden. "Still hanging around? I'm honestly impressed. I thought you'd have slipped out the back already." She held her breath, steadying herself, but Chase wasn't finished. He never was. "You see?" he continued, gesturing toward Sabrina, who stood proudly beside him in a gown that glittered like tinfoil under the lights. "Some of us moved on. Some of us became successful." He leaned in slightly. "Not everyone can keep up with that." Lily didn't respond. She didn't trust her voice not to crack. Sabrina chimed in with a sugar-coated tone. "It's sweet that you came alone, though. Really. Shows independence. Or something." "I have, in Trader." Chase laughed, pleased with himself, pleased with the attention, pleased with the tiny wound he believed he'd carved into Lily's heart. He loved moments like this, public victories that fed the ego he polished daily like a trophy. But what Chase didn't notice, too wrapped up in his own performance, was the shifting energy around him. People weren't laughing with him. Some were whispering, others were frowning into their glasses. Then his eyes cut sharply toward the entrance, where Evan Kingsley had entered moments earlier. Recognition flickered across Chase's face, followed by something rare: hesitation. Evan wasn't from Chase's world. Evan was the world Chase tried desperately to imitate. Power didn't cling to Evan, it moved aside for him. And Chase hated it. He straightened his tie, ran a hand through his hair, and muttered under his breath, "What the hell is he doing here?" For the first time that night, Chase's confidence faltered. And Lily, though she didn't fully understand why, felt a strange shift. The man who had controlled the room for years was no longer the most powerful one in it. The moment Evan Kingsley stepped into the ballroom, the atmosphere changed, as if someone had dimmed the lights and drawn all attention toward him. Conversations softened, postures straightened. Even the quartet hesitated for a beat, their bows floating mid-air. Evan was the kind of man whose presence commanded, not demanded, respect. But Chase Willard, already simmering with insecurity, refused to let the spotlight shift away from himself. "Lily," he said loudly, placing a hand on her shoulder as if he owned her past. "I want you to meet someone important." "When to?" Before she could step back, Chase raised his voice enough for surrounding guests to hear. "This is my ex-girlfriend, She came alone tonight, still single, still searching. A few heads turned. Some people exchanged uncomfortable glances. Sabrina laughed softly, covering her mouth with a manicured hand. "Oh, Chase, don't tease her," she said sweetly. "It's not her fault some women just don't get chosen." Lily felt heat climb her neck. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She wished the floor would open beneath her feet and swallow her whole. Chase continued, enjoying every second. Maybe tonight's her lucky night. Maybe someone here has low enough standards. A small, shocked gasp rippled through the crowd. Lily nearly dropped the glass of water in her hand. She wasn't weak, but humiliation, public, cutting, intentional had a way of reopening old wounds. Her vision blurred slightly, and she looked down, trying to hide the sting in her eyes. That was when Evan's voice cut through the moment like a calm thunder. "Is that how you speak to women?" he asked evenly. "Or just the ones who outgrew you?" The room froze again. Chase turned sharply. "This is a private conversation, Kingsley." "No," Evan replied, stepping closer, his tone still controlled but unmistakably authoritative. "You made it public the moment you raised your voice. People watched with breathless anticipation. This wasn't a mere disagreement. This was a collision between two worlds, one built on ego, the other on undeniable power." Chase tried to laugh it off, but it came out strained. "Just having some fun." Evan's eyes darkened. Humiliation isn't fun, it's cowardice. Sabrina grabbed Chase's arm, whispering, "Stop, everyone's watching." But the damage was done. Because in that moment, every guest in the ballroom saw what Lily had endured quietly for years. And they saw who was now standing between her and the man who had tried to break her. And for the first time, Lily felt something new rise in her chest. A small, trembling ember of hope. The moment the confrontation ended, Lily felt the room closing in on her. The music resumed, conversations picked up again, and laughter drifted across the ballroom, but none of it sounded real anymore. Everything felt muffled, like she was hearing it from underwater. Her chest tightened as she forced herself through the crowd, nodding politely when someone stepped aside, pretending she was fine. She wasn't. The humiliation wasn't just tonight's, it was years of quiet suffering brought to the surface in one brutal moment. Years of believing she wasn't enough. Years of letting Chase's voice become the narrator of her worth. By the time she reached the empty hallway outside the ballroom, her hands were shaking. She leaned against the cool wall, trying to steady her breath. But the tears came anyway, hot, silent, unwilling. She covered her mouth, terrified someone might hear the break she'd tried so hard to hide. Her mind raced. Why did Chase still have this power over her? Why did she let him? Why couldn't she just rise above it? She slid down until she was sitting on the polished floor, knees pulled to her chest, feeling smaller than she had in years. A soft sound echoed down the hall footsteps. Lily wiped her face quickly, trying to compose herself, but her voice trembled when she spoke. "Please, whoever you are, I just need a minute." But the steps didn't turn away. Evan Kingsley appeared at the corner, his expression softened in a way that didn't match the sharp, composed CEO the world knew. He didn't approach immediately. He simply stood there, giving her space, his eyes carrying a depth that made Lily's heart ache even more. "You don't have to pretend you're all right," he said quietly. She let out a shaky laugh. "I'm not pretending very well." Evan took a slow step closer. "You don't deserve any of what he said." Lily shook her head. "It's not just tonight, it's everything. My job, my mom's health. I feel like I'm failing at life." The vulnerability in her voice cut through him more than he expected. "For what it's worth," Evan said gently, "you handled yourself with more grace than most people ever could." Her eyes lifted, meeting his. "I don't feel graceful." "You feel human," he replied. "There's a difference." Silence settled between them, quiet, heavy, strangely comforting. For the first time in a long while, Lily didn't feel completely alone. But she didn't know yet this moment of breaking was the moment her life began to shift. Lily didn't know how long she sat in that quiet hallway with Evan nearby, offering presence without pressure. She wiped the last of her tears, embarrassed by her own vulnerability, but Evan didn't look at her with pity, only understanding. That alone unsettled her more than the humiliation she'd just endured. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "You didn't come here to babysit someone falling apart." "I didn't come here for the reunion," Evan replied calmly. She frowned. "Then, why are you here?" He hesitated, not in uncertainty, but in careful calculation, as though choosing how much truth to reveal. "I came because of you." Her breath caught. "That doesn't make sense," Lily whispered. "You don't even know me." Evan's eyes softened. "I've known your work for months." "My work?" He nodded. "Your portfolio from Crestline Marketing, your digital strategies. The campaign you built for the small healthcare nonprofit, I've kept it bookmarked." Lily blinked, stunned. That campaign had been dismissed by Chase as too soft, too emotional, and too feminine. "You applied for a position at Kingsley Corporation 3 months ago," Evan continued, "and your application never reached our hiring board." She swallowed hard. I never heard back." "That's because someone intercepted it." "Is another coming?" Her pulse stilled. A cold realization crept up her spine. "Chase?" she whispered. Evan didn't answer directly, but the quiet nod was enough. Lily looked away, shame and anger swirling together. Chase hadn't just broken her heart, he'd sabotaged her future. She wasn't dramatic, she wasn't imagining things. The cruelty had been real, intentional, and deeper than she knew. "But why would you care?" Lily asked quietly. "I'm nobody." "Why'd 24th?" Evan stepped closer, not too close, but enough for her to feel the gravity around him. "You're the only candidate who wrote a proposal centered on people, not profit," he said. "You understood impact. You understood humanity. That's rare in my industry." Lily blinked, overwhelmed. "And," he added, voice lowering, "I don't like seeing talent silenced." A shiver ran through her, not fear, but the unfamiliar sensation of being seen for who she truly was. She had spent years believing she was ordinary, forgettable, small. Yet here stood one of the most powerful men in the country, telling her he had noticed her long before tonight, before the humiliation, before the tears, before she ever knew his name. And Lily realized with a quiet, trembling certainty, this wasn't an accident. This was the beginning of something life-changing. The morning after the reunion felt strangely quiet. The humiliation still lingered in Lily's chest like a bruise she kept pressing without meaning to. But there was something else there too, something new. Evan's words, steady and unwavering, replayed in her mind. "I don't like seeing talent silenced." It was the first time in years someone had spoken to her as if she mattered. As if her work mattered. As if she wasn't invisible. By noon, an email arrived. From Kingsley Corporation. Subject: Invitation for a private consultation. Her breath caught. It wasn't a job offer, not yet, but an opening, a possibility, a doorway she had never been allowed to touch before. Lily stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Puffy eyes, messy bun, a woman holding herself together with sheer will. Something inside her whispered, "This is your chance. Don't show up as the woman he broke. Show up as the woman you were meant to be." She opened her small closet, filled mostly with basic blouses and sensible shoes, and chose the one item she'd saved for someday. A tailored navy dress she bought years ago during an end-of-season sale. It wasn't designer, but it fit her, like it had been waiting for the right moment. Her hair, she blow-dried carefully. Her makeup she applied with steady hands. When she stepped back, she didn't see the defeated woman from last night. She saw resilience shaped into flesh and bone. When Lily arrived at Kingsley Tower, glass, steel, and sky intertwined, she felt tiny all over again. The lobby alone looked like it belonged in a movie. But this time, she inhaled deeply and straightened her shoulders. "Miss Hartman?" the receptionist asked warmly. "Mr. Kingsley is expecting you." Her pulse jumped. They rode the elevator to the 56th floor, where the city unfurled like a painting across the windows. Evan stood by the conference table, reviewing documents, but when he looked up, he paused. Not in surprise. "In approval? You look ready," he said. Lily wasn't used to hearing those words, especially from someone like him. "I hope so," she replied softly. "You are," he corrected. What followed was a 2-hour conversation, not an interview, but a collaboration. Evan asked her opinions, challenged her ideas, listened without interrupting. By the time they finished, Lily felt something she thought she'd lost forever. Purpose. When she left the building, the sun was setting across Manhattan, turning the skyline gold. For the first time in a very long time, Lily didn't feel like she was trying to survive her life. She felt like she was stepping into it. And somewhere above her, in an office of glass and steel, Evan watched her go. with a certainty he wasn't ready to say aloud. For the first time in months, Lily walked into work with hope warming her chest. Evan had personally assigned her to assist on a new strategic outreach proposal, small but important enough to let her prove her worth. She spent late nights studying data, refining messaging, sketching ideas on sticky notes scattered across her kitchen table. Each line she wrote felt like stitching part of herself back together. And then, everything collapsed. The disaster began on a Wednesday morning. Lily arrived early, coffee in hand, heart steady, ready to submit her polished draft. But when she opened the shared project folder, her breath froze. Her file was gone. In its place was a corrupted document full of gibberish symbols and broken graphs. Hours of work, days of work, ruined. Worse, the timestamp suggested the file had been tampered with at 3:12 a.m. Panic clawed up her throat. She tried recovering backups. Nothing worked. Her hands trembled violently as she whispered, "No, no, no." She wasn't careless. She wasn't inexperienced. Someone had done this intentionally. By the time the project meeting began, Lily felt sick. Executives gathered around the conference table, Evan at the head. When he asked for her presentation, her voice barely emerged. I don't have it. The file was altered. I can't open anything." Several executives exchanged glances, disapproving, skeptical, dismissive. Lily felt their disappointment like sharp needles. "Altered how?" one of them asked bluntly. "It looks like sabotage," she said softly, hating how weak the word sounded. "Sabotage?" another repeated, almost amused. Heat rose in her cheeks. She stared down at her hands, humiliated all over again. Then Evan spoke. "Let me see the device." His voice wasn't angry, but it was tight, controlled, the kind of tight that meant someone was about to regret their choices. Lily handed over her laptop. Evan examined the logs with a sharpened gaze. After a long moment, he looked up. "This isn't user error." His tone hardened. This was deliberate. A murmur traveled through the room. But before Lily could breathe a sigh of relief, he added, "And whoever did it was skilled enough to hide their tracks." Her stomach dropped again. When the meeting ended, she stepped outside into the hallway, shoulders collapsing under invisible weight. The humiliation of the reunion had been painful, but this threatened her future, her chance, her rebirth. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass wall and whispered, "Why does this keep happening to me?" But what Lily didn't know not yet was that Evan had already launched a private investigation. And the name that would surface was the last one she ever wanted to hear. Lily didn't sleep that night. She sat at her small kitchen table, staring at her cold cup of tea, mind replaying every moment of the disastrous meeting. The humiliation clung to her like a second skin. She had given everything she had to that project, every ounce of hope she'd managed to rebuild, only for it to be destroyed in the most calculated way. By morning, she forced herself back to the office, determined to face whatever consequences awaited. Her stomach tightened as she stepped out of the elevator onto the 56th floor. Evan's assistant approached her immediately. "Mr. Kingsley wants to see you." Her breath hitched. This was it. The end. Another failure added to the long list she'd been dragging behind her. When she entered Evan's office, he wasn't alone. Two members of the cybersecurity division sat across from his desk, laptops open, expressions grim. Evan nodded toward the empty chair. "Sit, Lily. Is Mestevashen?" She did, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "We completed the investigation," Evan said, voice steady but edged. "Your laptop wasn't hacked from outside the company." Lily swallowed. "So, someone here did it?" "Yes, and we found the login credentials used." Her heart pounded. Her palms grew cold. She wasn't ready for the name, but it came anyway. Chase Willard. The world tilted. "No," she whispered, shaking her head instinctively. He doesn't even work here. Dumb. 2 for 1? One of the analysts turned his laptop toward her. He used a backdoor linked to an old consulting contract. He accessed your files and wiped your submission while you were asleep. Lily stared at the screen, the reality washing over her like ice water. Chase hadn't just mocked her. He hadn't just insulted her. He had deliberately tried to destroy the one chance she had to rebuild her life. It wasn't pettiness. It was sabotage. Targeted. Cruel. Personnel. Evan leaned forward slightly, his expression unreadable but his eyes burning with controlled fury. "He wanted you to fail," he said quietly. "He wanted you small. He wanted to erase your progress before it began." Tears welled in Lily's eyes, not from weakness, but from the crushing realization that Chase's cruelty went far deeper than she had ever known. "What happens now?" she whispered. Evan exchanged a glance with his cybersecurity team. "Now," he said, "I handle this." "And when was?" Something in his tone, steel wrapped in ice, sent a chill down her spine. This wasn't just a CEO speaking. This was a man preparing for war. And for the first time in her life, Lily had someone powerful fighting on her side. The Kingsley Foundation Gala was the kind of event people waited all year for, held at the historic Grand Meridian Hotel, where marble columns rose like pillars from another era, and crystal chandeliers sparkled above the city's elite. Lily had never attended anything so extravagant, never imagined she would set foot in a space where billionaires shook hands like old friends and politicians hovered near the bar, pretending they weren't networking. She shouldn't have been there, not in her mind. But Evan had insisted. "You're part of this company now," he'd said. "You belong in the room. If you have dot of rest." Yet, as she stepped into the ballroom, dressed in a simple but elegant charcoal gown she borrowed from her cousin, she felt every insecurity coil tight inside her. People floated past her like drifting silk, laughing, whispering, sipping champagne worth more than her monthly rent. Then she saw him, Chase, and, as always, trouble followed like a shadow. He noticed her instantly. His smirk sharpened, his eyes glinting with something between irritation and fascination, as if the universe had no right to place Lily in a space reserved for people like him. Well, Chase drawled as he approached with a glass of champagne. "Looks like someone's been climbing ladders she doesn't belong on." Lily took a slow breath. "I'm here with Kingsley Corporation." Chase laughed loud enough for those nearby to turn. "Kingsley Corporation? You? Come on, Lily. You can barely handle a marketing brief without crying." Her cheeks heated, conversations nearby softened, people were listening. "You know," Chase continued, swirling his drink, "some women thrive in the spotlight. Others," his gaze swept over her gown, "are better suited to watching from the sidelines." Lily felt every word hit like a bruise. He leaned closer, voice lowering. "You're going to embarrass yourself. And trust me, when you fall, Kingsley won't catch you." End quote. Before she could respond, before she could step back or defend herself, the crowd shifted. A presence approached. Evan, tall, composed, wearing a black tailored tux that made the board members straighten like soldiers. His expression wasn't angry, not yet, but the quiet, icy intensity in his eyes made Chase pale slightly. "Is there a reason?" Evan asked calmly. "You're speaking to my employee with such disrespect?" The room fell completely silent once more. Chase opened his mouth, closed it, then stammered, I was just making conversation." "Conversation," Evan repeated smoothly, "shouldn't require tearing someone down." A few guests exchanged looks. Sabrina, standing a few steps behind Chase, flushed in embarrassment. Evan's gaze didn't waver. "Lily," he said gently, "you belong here." The words, simple as they were, felt like an anchor dropping into place, steadying her, grounding her, lifting her all at once. But the night was far from over, because Chase wasn't finished, and the next move he made would ignite a fire he couldn't control. If the evening had ended with Evan defending her, Lily might have gone home with her heart steadier than it had been in years. But humiliation, especially Chase Willard's brand of humiliation, always demanded an encore. And he chose the worst possible moment. Just as the gala reached its golden peak, with cameras flashing and donors gathering around the stage, Chase stepped up beside Lily again, wearing a smile far too smooth to be sincere. "You know," he said loudly, ensuring nearby guests turned, "people keep asking me if you're really working at Kingsley Corporation." I told them it must be a clerical error, maybe charity work. Lily stiffened. "Leave me alone, Chase." "Oh, come on," he scoffed. "You can't expect anyone here to believe you earned your place, not when you showed up to college interviews in thrift store shoes." A few guests exchanged awkward glances, unsure whether to intervene. He leaned even closer. "Let's be honest, Lily. You're not Kingsley material. You never were." Her throat tightened, but she refused to look away. "You don't get to define me anymore." That was when Chase made his biggest mistake. He lifted his champagne glass and tapped it with a silver spoon, the sharp chime cutting through the music. The entire ballroom turned toward him. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chase announced, voice booming with ugly confidence, "I think we should toast the surprise of the evening, my ex-girlfriend Lily Hartman, who somehow snuck her way into this event." Lily froze. Gasps rippled. Sabrina covered her mouth, pretending to look shocked. Chase continued, drunk on attention. "She's been trying for years to climb out of mediocrity. Let's give her a hand for effort." A few uncomfortable laughs followed, mostly from people who didn't know better. Lily felt her pulse crash. Heat swarmed her cheeks. Her legs trembled. It was the reunion all over again, but magnified under chandeliers and cameras. Then, a hand touched her back gently. "Evan." He stepped forward, placing himself between her and the crowd, his calm voice echoing with unmistakable authority. "That's enough." Chase blinked, startled. Evan continued, his tone cool and sharp as cut glass. "You don't get to weaponize a microphone because you're threatened by someone else's potential." The room went still. Chase's jaw tightened. "This is between me and her." "No," Evan corrected. "This became everyone's business the moment you made her your target." Then, the line that silenced the ballroom. "Lily Hartman is not here because of you. She is here because she earned it, and because I personally asked her to be." The reaction was immediate whispers, wide eyes, stunned expressions. Chase went pale. Lily inhaled shakily, her heart pounding for an entirely different reason now. And just like that, the man who tried to break her in front of a room full of power found himself standing very, very small. The ballroom had barely recovered from Evan's public shutdown of Chase when another ripple moved through the crowd. A sharp, feminine voice sliced through the murmurs. "Chase Willard, you lying, two-faced fraud." Every head turned. Sabrina Lowell, Chase's glamorous fiancée, was marching toward him, heels clicking like gunfire across marble. But it wasn't her presence that caused the shock. It was the phone in her hand. The phone lit up with messages. Messages Chase recognized. He froze. "Where were you 2 nights ago?" Sabrina demanded, her voice trembling not with fear but with righteous fury. Chase tried to laugh it off. "Babe, this isn't the place." "Oh, it's exactly the place," she snapped. "Because you humiliated another woman in public, but forgot you left evidence of humiliating me in private." Gasps echoed through the crowd. Lily stood still, confused but uneasy. Sabrina turned the screen toward the audience, her hands shaking from anger. On it were text messages, hundreds of them, between Chase and a contact labeled Amber Backup Plan. Lily's breath caught. Amber, her former friend? The one she had trusted. The one she thought cared? The texts were incriminating, brutal, mocking Lily's life, her clothes, her job, anything Chase could turn into ammunition. There were also screenshots of Chase instructing Amber to accidentally leak rumors about Lily to damage her reputation. But the final text made the room erupt. "Destroy her project at Kingsley. Make her look incompetent. If she gets fired, she'll come crawling back. N for Spears." Lily felt her heart crack and harden at the same time. Chase lunged for the phone, panic flooding his face. "Sabrina, stop. This is being blown out of." But Sabrina stepped back, eyes blazing. "You cheated on me," she said, voice shaking. "With her, with others. And you sabotaged someone who never did anything to you." The crowd whispered fiercely now, scandal spreading like wildfire. But the real twist had yet to come. From the far side of the room, another figure stepped forward. Mrs. Lowell, Sabrina's mother, a woman known for her influence, wealth, and terrifyingly sharp memory. "I warned you once, Chase," she said coldly. "No man humiliates my daughter, and certainly not in front of half of New York." She turned to Evan and Lily. "My family will be supporting Miss Hartman's project at Kingsley. Consider this our statement." Chase staggered back, speechless. His attack on Lily, his manipulation, his arrogance, all of it collapsed in one brutal, elegant strike. And for the first time, Chase realized he was no longer fighting a woman he thought was beneath him. He was fighting the consequences he believed he'd never face. Chase Willard had always believed he was untouchable. For years, he'd coasted through life on charm, good looks, and the comforting illusion that consequences were for other people. But after Sabrina exposed him, after her mother publicly withdrew support from his business ventures, the illusion shattered. And Chase felt fear for the first time in years. Real fear. The kind that grew teeth. The next morning, panic drove him to Lily's apartment building. He waited by the entrance, pacing, running a hand through his hair so aggressively he nearly ripped out a strand. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his tie hung crooked. He didn't look like the polished man from last night's gala. He looked haunted. When Lily finally approached, holding a coffee in her work bag, she froze at the sight of him. "Lily," Chase exhaled, stepping toward her as if she were oxygen and he were drowning. "Please, I need to talk to you." She stiffened. "You need to leave." No, just listen," his voice cracked. "They're pulling funding from my projects. Sabrina's mother, she's ruining everything. You have to help me fix this." Lily blinked slowly, stunned by the audacity. "Help you?" she repeated softly. "After everything you've done?" Chase swallowed hard. "I know I messed up. I shouldn't have said those things, or done those things. But you know how I get when I'm stressed." "I wasn't thinking clearly." "Destroying my project was stress?" Lily asked. Her fingers tightened around her bag. "Humiliating me in front of a room full of strangers was stress?" He flinched. "Okay, I crossed a line. But you don't understand. Kingsley will listen to you. If you talk to him, if you help smooth this over—" "Chase," Lily interrupted, "you didn't cross a line. You burned every bridge you ever had with me." His jaw clenched. He reached out, but she stepped back. "You don't want me to succeed," she said quietly. "You wanted me small, controllable, invisible." "Lily, that's not fair." "No," she whispered, voice trembling not with fear, but with strength she didn't know she had. "What you did wasn't fair." End quote. For a moment, Chase looked like a child lost in a storm, wide-eyed, terrified, no idea how to navigate the mess he created. But then something darker flickered in his expression. "If you don't help me," he warned softly, "I'm not the only one who'll lose everything." Lily's breath caught. "What does that mean?" she demanded. But Chase didn't answer. He only walked away, leaving behind a chilling truth. A desperate man was far more dangerous than a cruel one. And Chase Willard had just crossed into both. Lily walked into Kingsley Tower the next morning, feeling unsettled. Chase's final words echoed in her mind like a haunting riddle. "I'm not the only one who'll lose everything." Whatever he meant, she couldn't let it distract her, not today. Not when Evan had asked her to attend a high-level strategy briefing. Normally, someone in Lily's temporary position would never set foot in that room. But when she entered, executives fell silent, not out of annoyance, but confusion. They wondered who she was, why she had been invited, and what it meant that Evan was already seated, waiting. "Lily," he said, motioning to a chair beside him, "you'll sit here." Her heart jolted. No one, no boss, no colleague, no partner had ever given her a seat at a table that mattered. The meeting began briskly. Charts glowed on screens. Analysts debated numbers. Senior directors argued over projections. Yet every few minutes, Evan turned to Lily and asked, "Thoughts?" At first, she hesitated. I'm not sure my perspective is valuable," he finished for her. "And that's why I'm asking." Her pulse steadied. So she spoke, gently at first, then with growing clarity. She identified gaps in outreach plans. She connected emotional resonance to corporate messaging. She explained how consumer trust was built through authenticity, not force. The room shifted. Directors leaned in. Analysts took notes. One executive whispered, "How did we miss that?" By the end of the meeting, Evan stood, concluding, "Lily will lead the narrative development for this initiative." There was stunned silence. "Sir," one director began, confused, "she's not on the leadership track." Evan's expression sharpened. "She is now." Lily stared at him, speechless. "Evan, why would you give me something this important?" He held her gaze with quiet conviction. "Because you earned it. And because someone tried very hard to convince you and this company that you weren't worthy." Her throat tightened. "But I see your potential," Evan continued, his voice lower now. "And I don't let talent go to waste." Emotions swept over her, unexpected and overwhelming. The woman who had once felt invisible was now being handed authority by a man whose influence stretched across the city. After the meeting, Lily stepped into the hallway, trying to catch her breath. That was when Evan approached. "There's something else," he said gently. "We're pursuing formal action against Chase. His sabotage won't go unanswered." Lily closed her eyes, a mix of relief and dread washing over her. But before she could speak, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. If you push this, someone you care about will pay. Her blood ran cold. Chase's threat was beginning to take shape. The threatening text haunted Lily the entire afternoon, each word clawing at the back of her mind. Someone you care about will pay. She tried to steady herself, tried to breathe normally, but her chest burned with dread. Chase wouldn't dare hurt her physically, he wasn't brave enough for that. But he knew where her vulnerabilities were, and he knew exactly whom she cared about. Her mother. Lily rushed out of Kingsley Tower the moment her lunch break began, dialing her mom repeatedly. No answer. Panic spiked. She sprinted to the subway, boarded the next train to Queens, and ran the last block to her mother's apartment. The door was ajar. "Mom?" Lily gasped, heart slamming in her chest. Her mother sat calmly at the kitchen table, sipping tea, unharmed but visibly shaken. "A woman came by," she whispered. "She said she was your friend. She asked questions about you, your job, your boss, even your finances." Something felt wrong. Lily's stomach twisted violently. Did she say her name? Her mom frowned. Amber? The world tilted. Amber, the woman she once trusted, the one who betrayed her with Chase, the one who fed rumors and helped destroy her reputation, had come here. To her mother? To her home? To her safe place. The threat wasn't just words. It had already breached the one part of Lily's life that had nothing to do with Chase or the corporate world. Tears stung, Lily's eyes not out of fear, but out of fury. "Did she hurt you?" Lily demanded. "No," her mother said gently, "but she wanted me to tell you something." Lily tensed. "What?" "That you should stop whatever you're doing at work, and that if you don't, more people will visit." Lily's blood ran cold. Amber wasn't operating alone. She was helping Chase tighten the vice. Together, they were trying to scare Lily into silence before Evan could take legal action. But they underestimated her. By the time Lily returned to Kingsley Tower, determination blazed through her veins like wildfire. She stormed into Evan's office without knocking. "We need to move forward with the case," she said firmly. "No delays. Chase is escalating." Evan's eyes sharpened instantly. "What happened?" Lily told him everything, the threat, the visit, Amber's involvement. Evan stood slowly, jaw tightening, the calm in his expression replaced by something colder, more dangerous. "Lily," he said, voice low, "they made one mistake." She looked up. "They touched someone you love. And I don't tolerate intimidation." She exhaled, shaken, yet steadied by his resolve. For the first time, she wasn't facing her battles alone. But the storm was only beginning, because Amber had her own secret, and when it came out, everything would explode. 2 days later, Manhattan buzzed with a storm Chase never saw coming. It began quietly, an email here, a phone call there, subtle ripples moving across the corporate world. Evan's legal team had spent the night gathering evidence: server logs, timestamps, recovered files, witness statements. What Lily didn't know was that Kingsley Corporation wasn't just filing internal charges. They were submitting a full case to the state cybercrime division. And the moment Chase arrived at his office, everything began to collapse. Security badges didn't work. Keycards flashed red. Colleagues avoided his eyes. "Must be a glitch," he muttered, slamming his card again. "Come on." A voice behind him stopped him cold. "It's not a glitch, Mr. Willard." He turned to find 2 internal investigators and his department head. "We need to speak with you," the director said sharply. "In private." Chase forced a smile. "Look, whatever this is, I'm sure. Your contract has been frozen pending investigation into criminal misconduct," the director cut in. "And your access to all systems has been revoked." Chase's confidence cracked. "Criminal?" he scoffed, but the panic crept through. "What are you talking about?" One investigator opened a folder and spread out documents on a glass conference table. Screenshots, recovered digital footprints, even a witness statement from Amber Lowell herself. And there it was. His sabotage. His break-in to Lily's files. His attempts to destroy her project. His texts coordinating it all. Each page felt like a slap. This is taken out of context," Chase stammered. "She's exaggerating. Amber lies when she's emotional." The investigator raised an eyebrow. Amber submitted audio recordings. The color drained from Chase's face. Amber, in a panic over her own legal exposure, had flipped. His last ally had abandoned him. But worse was coming, because as he desperately struggled to deny everything, the door opened, revealing an officer from the state cybercrime unit. Chase Willard? The officer asked. Chase froze, throat closing. You're being placed under investigation for unauthorized system access and digital tampering. You are required to comply with all subpoenas and surrender any personal devices relevant to the case. This is insane, Chase choked. You can't do this. You don't understand. She was nothing. She wasn't supposed to matter. The words slipped out before he realized how they sounded. The investigator looked at him with a mixture of disgust and disbelief. Mr. Willard, she said quietly, it seems the woman you tried to break mattered to the wrong people. And as Chase stood there, surrounded, exposed, spiraling, he understood for the first time that he wasn't feared. He was finished, and the world had finally stopped letting him get away with everything. The city glowed beneath the Kingsley Tower, a tapestry of gold and midnight blue. Lily stood alone on the rooftop terrace, hands resting on the cold railing, the wind brushing gently against her hair. The storm around Chase was still unfolding, but for the first time, she wasn't shaking. She wasn't breaking. She was breathing. Evan had sent her a message earlier. Meet me upstairs when you're ready. She didn't know why her heart had fluttered at the words, but she knew she had to come. A soft click of the door signaled his arrival. Evan stepped closer, his presence steady and quiet, the kind of presence that made the world feel less heavy. He didn't speak immediately. He simply stood beside her, eyes taking in the skyline he'd helped shape, then shifting to the woman standing next to him. You handled everything today with strength, he said softly. Lily let out a small breath. I didn't feel strong. You were, he replied. Strength isn't loud. Sometimes it's just refusing to fall apart when the world gives you every reason to. Their eyes met, and something shifted. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but undeniably. Lily looked away first, her voice barely above a whisper. Why are you doing all this for me, Evan? You don't even know me. Evan exhaled slowly, the truth pressing against his restraint. I do know you, he said. Maybe not every detail of your past, but I know your character, your work, your heart, and I know you deserved better than what life and certain people gave you. Her chest tightened. That still doesn't explain why. He hesitated. Then finally he stepped closer, closing the distance with quiet certainty. Because somewhere along the way, Evan said, voice low and unguarded, protecting you stopped feeling like something I should do as a CEO, and started feeling like something I needed to do as a man. Lily's breath caught. No one had ever spoken to her like that. With truth, with conviction, with care that didn't ask for anything in return. Evan, she whispered, unsure, overwhelmed. He didn't touch her, not yet. He simply held her gaze with a softness he rarely showed. I don't want you to be afraid of choosing something good, he said. Not everyone in your life is here to hurt you. Her eyes warmed, threatening tears not from pain, but from a tenderness she hadn't felt in years. I'm afraid, she admitted. He nodded gently. Then let me be the one thing you don't have to fear. The wind swept around them as Manhattan shimmered below. For the first time in a long time, Lily let herself imagine a different future. One where someone cared deeply. One where she wasn't alone. And tonight, she didn't step away. While Lily stood on the rooftop, embracing the first quiet hope she'd felt in years, Chase Willard's world was collapsing with merciless speed. News traveled fast in Manhattan's elite circles, faster still when a billionaire's legal team was involved. By sunrise, 3 investment partners withdrew from Chase's pending development deal. By noon, his digital fraud investigation hit the business press. By evening, his own company board scheduled an emergency vote to remove him as director. And for once, Chase couldn't charm or lie his way out. He stormed into the office of his attorney, sweat beading along his temples, arrogance replaced by something ugly and frantic. They can't do this to me, he yelled. They can, the attorney replied flatly, and they will. Chase slammed his fist onto the desk. Kingsley is blowing this out of proportion. It's one stupid file. It is a felony, the attorney cut in. Cyber tampering, evidence suppression, employer interference. And you left a digital trail only an amateur would be arrogant enough to think could be erased. For the first time, Chase went silent. His empire built on manipulation, charm, and inflated ego was turning to ash beneath his feet. The final blow came that evening. He arrived home to find suitcases stacked near the doorway. Sabrina stood in the living room, not tearful, not emotional, just finished. This isn't who I'm marrying, she said, her voice steady. You can't leave now, Chase snapped. You need me. No, she corrected. You needed me. For my mother's money, for my connections, not for love. She handed him a manila envelope. My mother filed a civil suit against you for emotional damages and fraud. You'll be served in the morning. Chase's mouth fell open. She can't. She can, Sabrina replied. And Evan Kingsley is advising her legal team. His knees nearly buckled. But Sabrina wasn't done. And just so we're clear, she added, you didn't lose all this because of Lily. You lost it because of who you are. The truth hit harder than any lawsuit ever could. Hours later, Chase sat alone in his darkened apartment, the apartment he'd lose in a matter of weeks. For the first time, he confronted a reality he'd spent years avoiding. He was not invincible. He was not admired. He was not feared. He was irrelevant. And the woman he once mocked as not enough was now standing beside a man whose power eclipsed anything Chase could ever dream of. As he stared at the city lights beyond his window, one truth settled heavily. He had destroyed himself. And Lily Hartman had finally escaped the shadow of his cruelty. 2 months after Chase Willard's fall from grace, the world around Lily Hartman looked nothing like the life she once knew. Her mother's health had improved. Her anxiety had faded, and her name, spoken now with respect inside Kingsley Tower, no longer carried the shadow of humiliation. Tonight, she stood in a ballroom once again. But she wasn't the insecure woman who had been mocked under chandeliers. She was a leader, confident, steady, quietly powerful. The Kingsley Corporation Anniversary Gala was held at the Plaza Hotel, its gold-trimmed halls glowing with history and elegance. Yet, despite the grandeur, Lily felt something she never felt in rooms like this before. She belonged. Evan approached her through the crowd, wearing a classic black tux, his expression softened by something few people ever saw. Warmth. You did beautifully tonight, he said. The board loved your presentation. Lily smiled. It still feels unreal. It shouldn't, he replied. You earned every second of this. As the string quartet shifted into a softer melody, Evan extended his hand. Walk with me? She nodded. They stepped out into the terrace overlooking Central Park. Lanterns glowed, casting gentle light along the stone railing. A cool evening breeze brushed past them, carrying the distant hum of New York, the city where Lily had once felt invisible, now embracing her like a long-lost daughter. Evan paused, turning to face her fully. There's one more thing I need to say, he began, voice quiet but unwavering. Not as your CEO, as a man who admires you more deeply than he ever expected. Lily felt her breath catch. You showed strength when people tried to break you, grace when you were humiliated, and courage when you stood up to the past that wounded you. His eyes softened. Lily, I want to build something with you. Not just a company project, a life. Her heart tightened not with fear, but with a radiance she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Evan, are you sure? He let out a gentle laugh. I've never been more certain. Then he reached into his jacket and her breath stilled. A small velvet box, not flashy, not extravagant, but meaningful in its quiet elegance. I'm not asking for an answer tonight, he said softly, but I want you to know my intentions. I want a future with you, whenever you're ready. Tears warmed Lily's eyes, not from sadness, but from healing. For the first time, she wasn't someone's afterthought. She wasn't someone's mockery. She wasn't someone's stepping stone. She was chosen, cherished, respected. She closed the box gently and whispered, I'm not afraid anymore. Evan smiled. You never needed to be. And as the city lights shimmered behind them, Lily Hartman stepped fully, finally, into the life she deserved. A life where love didn't hurt. A life where justice had prevailed. A life where she rose and never fell again. So that's how our story comes to an end. And if you're still here with us right now, it means something in Lily's journey touched your heart in its own quiet way. Maybe it reminded you of a time you felt overlooked, underestimated, or pushed aside. Maybe it reminded you that pain doesn't define you, how you rise does. The Stoics believed, what stands in the way becomes the way. And honestly, that's exactly what happened here. Every setback Lily faced became the very path that led her to strength, dignity, and love. Life isn't about avoiding hardship. Marcus Aurelius wrote, the impediment to action advances action. And maybe that's the reminder we all need today. The people who try to break you are not stronger than the person you're becoming. If this story made you feel something, hope, courage, healing, then don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel so more people can hear stories that lift them up when life feels heavy. You're not alone. You're growing. And the best chapters of your story are still ahead.